Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 209. In this episode, you're going to hear from Lia Pinelli. Lia is a coach who helps driven, busy women stop overeating, and she helps them from the inside out. In this episode, we're going to talk about your relationship with food and how it affects your children, and getting to the source of our discontent and how that relates to food and eating. And we also talk about all or nothing thinking. So stay tuned. I know that you're absolutely going to love this episode with Lia. But first, I got to ask you, do you love this podcast? If so, head on over to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating and review. That would be so helpful so that other badasses just like you can find the show. And then, of course, screenshot it and send it to me on Instagram at Ordinary to Badass so that I can say thank you. Every little review helps, so I absolutely appreciate it. And if that's not your jam, then just send it to a friend. So if you know anyone that could gain value from this podcast, yeah, send it to them. Let them judge for themselves. But again, other badasses, that's what we're aiming for. Other people who want to be badasses, trying to live their best life, who want to overcome the hardships that come their way. All right, you already know all this stuff. You're a listener. Let's get to the episode. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I am so glad you're here. Today's guest is Lia Pinelli. Lia, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Marie, for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
Girl, you know I am badass. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't a badass.
I love it. Well, people still don't always own it. So I love that you just owned it.
I'm owning it. I'm owning it. And I want other women to own it too.
Yes.
That's what I love about your podcast.
So have you always felt like a badass?
Oh, wow. What a good question. I think it probably would come and go in waves. There were definitely times that I didn't feel like a badass. I was really, I was a bad kid. I was, a totally rebellious teenager. Pretty out of control. And I think I felt like a badass then for sure, out of control in like all the best ways if you're a teenager and all the worst ways if you were my mother. But then, when I eventually made my way through college, I didn't always feel like a badass then. I actually had to repeat all of high school in community college because I had screwed up high school so badly. And so I literally spent 4 years repeating high school and then 2 years of undergrad in community college before then I did eventually transfer to UC Berkeley. And it's interesting because I didn't feel like a badass then at all. Like I really felt like I had screwed things up. I was really dumb and uneducated, didn't understand so many things because I was really street smart, but I wasn't school smart. And so I had to figure that part out. And then when I got into Berkeley, I felt pretty badass. But then once I got to Berkeley, I didn't feel like a badass anymore. You know what I mean? Because all of a sudden it's like a total imposter syndrome. And so I feel like it just comes and goes in waves. In that way.
No, I think that's so true. It's like sometimes we're going to feel more badass than other times, but it's just a matter of sticking with it and kind of pushing through those times where you feel a little bit weaker or not so strong. And it's just a matter of pushing through it and knowing that you're a badass.
I love that. And you know what I love about that is I was just thinking when you were talking is I'm old enough now to know that I am legit a badass, even when I don't feel like a badass. Do you know what I mean? Because like you can still be a badass even if you don't feel like it. And I think what's happened over the years is I've accumulated so much evidence of my own badassery, right? Like that I can draw on that when I'm not feeling like a badass, and I'm like sometimes when I say to myself, like, I created a human being out of my own body, like that is badass. I'll play some Lizzo while I'm getting ready in the morning, just to, because it's like, you got to get yourself back in the game in that mental state, because like you've talked about, right? Like it's a mindset, right? And so when we flip out of it, we can also lovingly nudge our way back into it.
Yeah. And I liked how you talked about the evidence. And it's so important to look at the evidence. And, previously we had a guest on the show that talked about like the wall of badassery. And so she'd write down all the badass things that she had done and then go back and review it whenever she was feeling like insecure. And so I thought that was so cool.
I'm writing that down right now. That is such a great idea. The wall of badassery. I'm going to start one of those myself.
Rebecca Kordecki talked about that. So yeah, I thought that was
okay. I'm going to go back and listen to that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So Lia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Lia Pinelli, and I'm a life coach. I specialize in helping women actually overcome the compulsion to overeat. I personally was a big time overeater. I thought about food constantly. It resulted in lots of overeating and me being overweight for, just like badassery on and off over the years, right? Depending on which diet I was on. I kind of given up on dieting and all of it, and had just kind of been resolved to, overeating. And I discovered a mindset tool. And I was shocked to figure out that this one shift in my mindset actually resulted in the end of overeating for me, at least the beginning of the end of overeating. It was a powerful tool. I actually teach the tool for free now. I can share that with your listeners, but it was the beginning of a real mindset shift, but also a physiological shift for me, in terms of my eating habits. So from there, I just had to know more. And so I went through training and explored, and now that's what I do, is I help other women, really figure out why they're overeating in the first place. And there's almost always two reasons. One is psychological, emotional, and the other one is physiological. A lot of times it's what we are eating is actually fueling our desire to eat more and more and more. And so we actually solve for both of those pieces. And the result is peace with food, which for me, when I lost 30 pounds and with minimal effort, and I've maintained it for 5 years now. And, but that the 30 pounds doesn't even really matter, because it's the mental real estate that has been freed up for me, that has just been mind blowing. And so the reason I do the work I do is because I truly believe that if we as women, Katie Couric says in the movie Misrepresentation, she says, if women spent a tenth of the time, fixating on solving the world's problems as they currently do on their weight and dieting, we would have solved the world's problems by now. And I believe that. I really believe that. So this is my mission, right? It's to help other women free up that mental real estate that they're currently using, counting calories and carbs and all of it, and instead focus on what really matters, which is being a badass, creating careers that they want, contributing in their communities, raising their children, like the things we really care about, not worrying about, whether or not our pants are going to fit tomorrow. It's just such a waste of our mental real estate.
Yes, no, I love the mindset piece, and I definitely want to hear more about that. But first, I got to ask you about this tool that you mentioned, the one that helped you for the end of overeating.
Yes. So it's funny because when I actually went to life coach training, I was working at the time with teenage girls, and I had created an empowerment course for girls. And it was like the best job in the world. I got paid to sit around and connect with teenage girls about what really mattered to them and help them understand what healthy relationships should look like, and that there's nothing wrong with their bodies, and, like how the media impacts our sense of self-image and self-worth. And so we were talking about this really good stuff. But yet what I found was that I didn't actually have the tools to help them really, truly navigate their own lives. So I would, for example, girls would be talking about some crappy relationship that they're in with some loser boyfriend. And all I could do was just tell them, you need to dump him, and that wasn't really helping them. I wanted them to have the ability to really understand and think for themselves about if this is the kind of relationship they want to be in. So I went to life coach training, hoping to acquire some of those tools. And it was back then in 2016 that I had heard about weight loss coaching, it was called. And I immediately thought, as being someone who has dieted since the age of 9, my immediate thought was, well, that sounds like a scam, because if that worked, I would have done it by now, right? Like I would have already done it. And so I didn't even consider it. And, I'm in the life coaching world at this point. I've gone through training, I'm working as a coach. And still, anytime I heard of weight loss coaching, I was like, get away from me with that. Well, it wasn't until I was listening to a podcast by a master coach named Brooke Castillo, and she taught this tool called the hunger scale. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it's not a diet. It's literally, it's, and I teach it. I teach it in under 17 minutes, but of course I can't teach it here because it would take a little too long. But you can put it in your show notes or whatever. You can get it at liapinelli.com. But basically the premise is that, first of all, if you are like me and you have gone through, I mean, for me, it was decades of dieting, right? So we go through decades of dieting, and what happens, I didn't learn this part from Brooke, I learned this later, but what happens is that when we are constantly yo-yo dieting, our weight is up and down, we're restricting, we're binging, we're doing all the things that we do. What happens is that we create for ourselves metabolic dysfunction. No longer, the hormones that kick in to tell us that we're hungry or to tell us that we're satiated, they no longer work, because if you're anything like me, you first of all, don't let yourself get hungry, right? Like everybody says, oh, carry a snack in your purse and don't let yourself get hungry because you'll get out of control and you'll eat the whole fridge, And so women are like fearful of hunger. So we never actually feel hungry because we eat preventatively. And then what happens is if leptin never kicks in, if ghrelin never kicks in to tell you that you're hungry, guess what else isn't going to kick in? Leptin, which is what signals the signal to tell you that you're full. So for me, I didn't have a full signal until I was stuffed. Like it was always like I was either empty or full. I was either starving or stuffed. And there was no real big difference. I could have a whole burrito in between starving and stuffed. And so when I learned this tool, which basically teaches you how to reestablish those hormonal kind of signals for yourself. And once you've reestablished those, and it doesn't take long, but once you've reestablished those, then you can actually, I'm actually physically hungry right now. And I know I'm physically hungry because I can feel it, or I'm feeling it in my head or my tummy or whatever it is. So now I know to eat. And then I also will be able to tell when I'm ready to stop eating before I've overeaten. And I want to be fully transparent. So I practiced that and I couldn't believe it because I lost 7 pounds just doing that. And I was like, whoa, what's happening here? I have to know more. Now I have clients who have lost up to 20 pounds just using that one tool. But I will be fully transparent with you, Marie, that for most people, it goes beyond that, because we can all sit around and like just eat when we're hungry and stop when we're full. But what happens when we're stressed and we're like, I got to go get, for me, it was chocolate and popcorn and coffee. Those are the 3 things I need all together at once, So it's like, that doesn't help. I know I'm not hungry, but I'm going to go eat the chocolate because I just need it right now. I just want it right now. So the impulse and the desire of when we're tired and we just want to, drink a bottle of wine and eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's, or all of that isn't really addressed in the just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're not. So while it's a powerful tool, there's more to it usually for women who, like me, really struggle with stopping when it comes to eating. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, no, absolutely. So you initially started working with kids or working with teenagers. What did you discover kind of going through this process? What did you discover, or what would you now tell those kids?
Oh, that's such a good question. So what was interesting is that, as I did, research and studied in order to teach my girls about, why the state of being socialized as a woman in this country, why it is the way it is, I learned so much about things such as a girl is far more likely to experience disordered eating if she watched her mother diet. And so many of my friends, even I have a son, but it doesn't matter what his gender is, really, it doesn't matter. But I had so many friends who would say, oh, well, I never talk about it with my daughter. My daughter has no idea, but she is in such turmoil. And I never really say this to them, but I'm always like, but she knows, because I have clients now who are like, my mom never talked to me about it, but I could see her discomfort when she would sit down and pull her shirt out because she was embarrassed about her rolls. Or for me, my mom didn't really talk about it. She definitely didn't push anything on me, but I watched her count her points at the table. Right. And so, and my mom did suggest a diet, I think because the pediatrician had expressed concern that I was overweight, but it wasn't like overly pushed on me at all. But yet when we see our mothers even if it's just counting Weight Watchers points at the table, what that does is it doesn't totally screw us up. I'm not saying that that's somehow like the worst thing ever. And, if you have kids, just know you're going to screw them up no matter what. So just start saving for the therapy fund, because we're all going to screw up our kids somehow. But when we see that, the message it sends to girls is that that's what women do. Women have to watch their weight. Women have to be careful with food. Women have to be fearful of weight gain. And women can't have, and a lot of it's the semantics. It's the language that we use when it comes to food. Like, this is so good. I'm so bad. I was so bad. I ate the cookies, right? And so that messaging gets passed on to our girls. And it's like, oh, if I eat cookies, I am bad, right? And as moms, like, we don't mean to, like, I definitely don't want to mom shame or mom blame here at all. But when I learned about that kind of like generational legacy that we are unknowingly passing on to our girls, I was like, man, I want to do something about this, right? Because in my mind, we could change this. The trajectory of dieting for girls could completely change in one generation if we just hit enough women on board really understanding that it doesn't have to be this way.
So what is something that moms can do to start having these conversations, or just, I don't know, open it up for their children so that their children feel more comfortable with their weight?
Such a good question again. Here's what I always say. Actually, I have a whole podcast on kids and food, because one of the things that we do is, because parents are often anxious about their own children from a very young age. I'm thinking about young children, anxious about them not getting the nutrients they need, because kids all of a sudden stop eating anything that came out of the ground, and all they want to eat is like white food and all that stuff that happens. So then what we do as parents is we panic, and then we start to attach our emotional well-being to what they're eating. And I think that that's the first place that we really could start as parents, is really working hard to not attach our emotional well-being to what our kids are eating, because they pick up on that. And then of course they're going to use it as a power play, but also it really starts to load the experience of food. It loads it with emotion. And what my goal is, at least with my own child, is to really separate out my emotion from his eating experience. I mean, food and emotions go together, but I would like for them to go together in only positive ways, right? Like sitting down, having a meal together, breaking bread, like those are all great emotions. Let's keep those, but let's not add the stress and the pressure to it. So that's what I would say from early age. But then as kids get older, and like I said, I have a boy, and this can still impact boys. But I would say as they get older, I think that the most important thing that parents can do, and in particular women, is we have to actually get right with it ourselves. Because so many women think, if I just tell my daughter how amazing and perfect she is, just how she is, but your daughter knows that you don't think that about yourself, that is completely undermining your message. She doesn't believe you. You know what I mean? She's like, yeah, mom, you're saying I'm all perfect, but you don't even think that you're that great. And I think you're great. So why would I trust your assessment of me? Right. And so it's really about modeling self-respect, self-love, self-worth. And I think that comes up, from the very beginning, it comes with, I think, women being unapologetic about rejecting self-denial, about rejecting this idea that we have to be self-sacrificing and that we have to somehow give and give and give at our own expense. I think it has to start there, because we think we're being good moms by doing that, but all we're doing is teaching our daughters and our sons, and I'm speaking in a binary here, but teaching our daughters and our sons that this is what women do. So then we're also raising up boys who think that women should just be self-sacrificing, and right. And so we really want to model for them that our own health, our own wellness, our own love for ourselves is paramount. And so I think that when I say that we model that for them, I think that starts with your mindset, right? It starts with really truly believing. I know it's easy to say that, right? Well, just believe that you're worthy. But I think it actually then starts with doing that work of working with someone, if that's necessary, or having a team or a group of people that you are elevating your own self-image with, so that you can actually be the person that you want your daughter or son to be. You can actually model that for them in a very authentic way, and not just talk the talk, but actually walk the walk.
Yes. And I think it's so important to have mentors and people around you who have gone through these experiences and come out the other side, like not just take advice from everybody, you know, who hasn't solved the problem, you know,
Right.
or feel like you got to struggle yourself until you finally figure it out when you could go much quicker with a mentor.
Yes, absolutely. That is exactly it. That's what I always say to people. I'm like, you can read a million self-help books and you can figure it all out, but you're going to accelerate your results, you know, if you just get on board with somebody who's just a little further down the path than you are.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So earlier you talked about the tool and how it didn't necessarily work for the stressful times. And so what do we do when the stressful times come up and all we want to do is like grab the brownies or grab, you know, what is another way that we can solve that problem instead of binging on food?
That's such another great question. And it's a really hard one to answer because there's actually like a myriad of factors that like it's a multifaceted answer, right? Like there's many different things there that can kind of come together. One of the things that I teach my clients is that the first thing we have to do is we have to actually get to the source of our discontent. Because I'll give you an example. You know, I was an overeater forever, but most recently I was working as a high school administrator of a major high school. I was a dean, and I really hated my job. But I loved the kids. But the job, I was doing discipline all day long and it wasn't aligned with my values. And so it was an intense job. And I would come home every day. I'd sit in 45 minutes of Bay Area traffic to get home. And then I had a little toddler at home that I was so excited to see, but also who needed a lot of things. And he needed a bath and we need to get dinner on the table. And we got like, there's so much happening. And I was exhausted and I was so dissatisfied. So all I could think of on the drive home was like, I can't wait to get home, open a bottle of wine and pull out the cheese and crackers and just like get through the night, you know? And that was my response to feeling exhausted and overwhelmed was at least I've got some wine and cheese to make me happy, you know? And then of course that would lead to chocolate peanut butter cups while I did the dishes and all the things, right? But so my point in sharing that story is because first we have to get to the root of why is it that we're going to food in the first place? Because there's a reason and it's a legitimate reason. And sometimes the reason is just, well, I was bored, right? And so then the question is like, well, do you want to be someone who always eats when she's bored? And my answer for that would be no way. I would rather either just feel the boredom and wait for a spark of creativity to strike, or I would rather move out of boredom. Like, let me go figure out something else to do. But eating just because I'm bored, I didn't like that reason for eating, right? Do I want to be someone who eats when she's exhausted and tired and stressed? My answer to that was no, but it also made me realize that once I figured out, oh, that's what I'm doing. Like I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm dissatisfied, I'm frustrated with my career. And so therefore I'm eating. And so then I was like, I'm going to stop being a person who eats when she does that. So when I stopped, guess what happened? What happened was that now I had to actually face the fact that I was really dissatisfied in my career. And so then it was like, oh, now I have to do something about it. But if I hadn't stopped eating, if I would have just kept eating and drinking, you know, my chocolate, my cheese, my wine, my chocolate, my cheese, my wine, if I had just kept doing that, I never would have had to face the fact that I have a master's degree from Stanford University in this subject, and yet I'm now deciding that this isn't what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like I had to really confront that, like after 15 years of being an educator, maybe this wasn't the career for me. And so it's like, okay, but I would rather then go down that path because now I do have, for me, dream career and I'm no longer overeating. But if I hadn't stopped connecting food to my pain, I would have never, ever, I promise you, I would still be a high school administrator, totally miserable and probably yelling at my son and husband, you know, every night, you know, does that make sense?
Yeah. And it sounds like, well, I think it is like food is an avoidance tool, you know, instead of dealing with the emotion or dealing with the thing that we don't want to face, we just eat food because that's easier, or drink wine or chocolate or whatever.
100%. And people can do it with a lot of different things, right? So, you know, my sister, she wasn't an emotional overeater ever until the pandemic. And then she was like, oh, Lia, now I know what you're talking about. You know, she's like shoveling popcorn in her mouth. But my sister will totally distract herself, say with like a Netflix series where she'll just like avoid doing what she used to do because, oh, she's gonna be mad at me now that I'm airing her dirty laundry. But do you know what I mean? So it could be, or it could be shopping, you know, like I have a client who it used to be shopping and then it switched to food. And so it can be a lot of different things. It's just for me and my clients, it happens to be food and or drinking, you know, not alcoholism, right? But just drinking more than we want to as a response to feeling bad about something.
Yes. So I am going through health coach training, but it was mostly
Oh.
for myself to like figure out, you know, my weight situation. But then I'm also a certified financial coach. And so I just find it so crazy, the similarities, like how much it is not about the numbers for the finances,
Yes.
for the weight, and it's all about the mindset. But it was just kind of mind blowing to me.
I talk about that all the time, Marie. That is so true. Money and food are, it's like the same deal, right? You can overspend, we overeat, and then we pull back. We're like, I'm gonna eat beans and rice forever, you know, and then and then that doesn't work. And you know, but beans and rice because it's cheap, but then we're like, next thing you know, you're at the fancy restaurant. So it's totally the same. I totally agree with you.
And something you said just made me think like about the restrictive eating or the restrictive side.
Yeah.
I think that it's so easy if you've been binging, you know, to go to like the complete restriction.
Yeah.
What can we do to combat that?
Oh, such a good question again. Man, you've got good questions. I keep saying that. I'm like, such a good question. So that's the pendulum swing that I think is so familiar for so many of us. And for my clients, we are, myself included, like recovering all or nothing thinkers. Meaning it's always like, I'm all in, I'm all out. I'm on the wagon, I'm off the wagon. You know, I'm good, I'm bad, you know? And so, and that can be with a lot of things, right? Just like with money, like either I'm totally saving or I'm totally spending. And so that all or nothing thinking actually gets us into quite a bit of trouble because it's permissive thinking. Ultimately, it's basically saying either I'm going to do it and I'm going to go all in, but then the minute that I slip up, the minute that, you know, my partner comes home with a pizza, the minute that I forget and eat something, the minute that I don't have access to, you know, what I had planned to eat today, well, then I call it getting a case of the F it's, right? Where you're like, oh, well, F it, you know, I already had one piece of pizza. I might as well have six, you know,
Right.
or I already had a glass of wine, so I might as well order the cheesecake. So it's like, it is the pendulum swing. And so what I say to that is to first just be really onto yourself. When you, and there's all kinds of tools that you can learn and develop to increase your self-awareness, but it starts with that self-awareness of like, ooh, I'm having all or nothing thinking right now, right? I'm totally doing that thing where if I'm not perfect, then I'm all bad. And that is a cognitive distortion. That is a thought error. It is not true. And so it's important to just recognize, oh, okay, like I don't have to swing to either side. I can have this piece of cheesecake because it's, you know, I want it or it's here or whatever it is, but I don't have to go all the way over, right? Like there are other options for me right now. There are other possibilities. And what I strongly recommend to women is, well, a lot of times we won't catch it until it's already done. We're like, I already went all in on that binge. And then I realized, oh, I was having all or nothing thinking. But that is still so valuable to spend some time thinking through. And I actually have my women like do a mental redo. So it's like, okay, if you could go back now and do it again, what would you do? And we really go through it play by play. And, you know, a lot of times like, I would have split the dessert with my sister, or, you know what I mean? Like, they're like, I just didn't have to, like, I didn't even, and they never feel good after. I never felt good after. After eating the whole thing, it's like, I just would have had half and I would have been great. And so recognizing for themselves that that middle road was always available to them. And the power of though going back through it, you can do this yourself, right? You don't need a coach to do this with you, but the power of going back through it and actually writing it out if you're not working with a coach can be powerful. Because what happens is that replay in your brain actually kind of trick your brain into thinking that you did it that way. Not that you replace that experience, but what happens is then you start to gain some familiarity with other options, even though it's imagined. So that the next time that you're sitting at the Cheesecake Factory or wherever you are, the next time you're in that situation, you'll start to be able to catch it in the moment, or maybe even right before it's happening, right? With enough practice, you'll be like, oh, this is right now, I'm totally doing all or nothing thinking. Or you'll be like, oh, tonight we're going out and I know I have a tendency to go into all or nothing thinking. So then you can plan and anticipate for that and decide ahead of time, like, how do I want to show up for myself? Who do I want to be? And I think at the core of it is also allowing space to feel satisfied. So this idea of all or nothing thinking is often comes from this diet mentality of like, I have to restrict in order to get what I want, like to lose 30 pounds. But the truth is restriction will never get you there. The road has to be paved with pleasure, or else you will not continue down that road. We are hardwired to seek pleasure as animals, as humans. And so really recognizing that, like, if you're telling yourself you're going to go to the Cheesecake Factory with all of your friends and you're going to drink water and eat a salad with no dressing, I promise you that's not going to last, right? Like, you have to really figure out what satisfaction looks like to you and then allow space for that while also allowing space for meeting your health goals.
Man, there was so many value bombs, and what you just said, I loved it all. But I totally agree. We are wired to seek pleasure. And a lot of times when we're setting goals, we're thinking of all the pain along the way, all the things that we're missing out on and that we can't have, instead of focusing on like the end result, like how we're going to feel and what it's going to be like. And, you know, like just the end of the road, which feels so much more pleasurable than where you're at right now.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I know that we're winding down here, but something that I often like to ask guests is, do you have a resource or a book or a podcast, something that you've listened to that has helped motivate you or encourage you along your journey?
Oh man.
I know I'm springing it on you here.
Well, I've got so many. I'm like, oh my gosh, Marie, how do I choose? Well, it doesn't actually have to do with weight loss. And if anything, it's actually the antithesis. But the number one book that I recommend to everyone always, there's two. Number one is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Because I think that goes back to so much of what we were talking about actually earlier, which is just this sense of self-worth and worthiness, and you were born worthy. And I feel like that book just gets at the foundation that I feel like we as women, we need more of that, more permission giving, more, you know, one of my favorite words is unapologetic, right? And I feel like Glennon Doyle in that book is totally unapologetic. That's also why I love Lizzo, right? Because she's so unapologetic. So I would say those. Another book that I strongly recommend is James Clear's Atomic Habits for habit building. Such a good one. And then in terms of podcasts, I listen to so many podcasts, but the first one that comes to mind right now is she's another life coach. Her name is Cara Lowenthal, and she has a podcast called F Your Brain. But the U is spelled with an asterisk. But that's a really good one too, for really, in my experience, really helping you to understand how your brain is creating the results that you're getting in your life. And that's the same philosophy that I use with my clients, right? It's like I said at the beginning, it's not just physiological, like what I'm eating is causing me to crave to eat more, but it's also mindset, it's psychology. And Cara Lowenthal does a lot of, her podcasts are really about that blend of psychology and coaching to really help you understand how your brain is creating your results.
Yes, thank you. I will add those to the show notes so everybody can check them out. And let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
Oh, so good. I think here would probably be my number one tip. So I would say that my number one tip is to simply get up 20 minutes before everybody else, or stay up 20 minutes after everybody else. I don't care. Just get your 20 minutes of alone time. I used to have to do this in the bathroom. You know, when I had a little one, like mommy's in the bathroom, I'd lock the door, and like that was my moment. But truly, and get really, really clear on what it is that you want unapologetically. Like write it down in a journal. You can burn it later. Nobody will see it, right? But then I think that my number one tip would be to go after what it is that you want, fully ready to be totally uncomfortable the entire time. Because in my experience, and Brooke Castillo, who I mentioned earlier, she says the discomfort is the currency of your dreams. And discomfort is, in my mind, the pathway, because it's really uncomfortable to step outside of your comfort zone. That's kind of the definition of a comfort zone, right? And so when we're stepping outside of it, it's super uncomfortable. And our brains immediately want to like set off alarm bells to be like, something's wrong, we're uncomfortable. But the thing is that discomfort is actually the pathway to get you there. And so if you are willing to feel discomfort, then you're unstoppable. But if you're unwilling to feel discomfort, you won't ever get there. You're going to stay in your comfort zone. And I know that sounds maybe like, well, obvious, but I don't actually think that most people are willing to feel the discomfort. So we stay comfortable. We keep watching the Netflix and drinking the bottle of wine and eating the cheese. And, like we just stay there because it's really comfortable. But if you're willing to be uncomfortable, like I was, right, when I had to actually face that, like if I remove the wine and the cheese and the chocolate, I have to actually look at what's making me uncomfortable, which is my current life choices. And I want to do something about that. And then how uncomfortable that was to actually change careers and change all of it. But at the same time, like it got me to my goal, right? And it was super uncomfortable the whole way through. So not allowing ourselves to be deceived into thinking that it's supposed to be all fun and games. You can make discomfort fun. You can laugh at it. You can have fun with discomfort, but it's still really uncomfortable. And so if you're just willing to feel it, you're good to go.
Go to beers, listen to Lia, feel discomfort, be unstoppable, be your badass self. Just don't be afraid to feel the discomfort. So I love that.
All of it. I love it.
So Lia, how can we connect with you?
You can find me at liapinelli.com. My name is spelled Liapinelli. And there you can find that free 17-minute training. I'm also on Instagram at Lia Pinelli. I'm on Facebook too, but less so these days. And I have a podcast called the Life You Crave podcast, which you can find anywhere that you get your podcasts, or you can find that on my website as well.
Okay, I will add that to the show notes. Thank you so much, Lia. You've been a total badass and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Yay. Thank you so much, Marie, for having me. This was so fun.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.